In this fourth video of 6, we're going to carry on creating our gorgeous Instagram clone, Quasar, using vue.js, Quasar, Firebase, Node.js and Express. And in this video, we're going to set up a Firebase Cloud Firestore Database where we can later store all of our post data. We're going to set up Firebase Storage where we can later store all of our photos. And we'll also set up a Node.js and Express Backend where we'll later create one endpoint for getting all of the posts from our database and one endpoint for creating a post and also uploading the photo to Firebase Storage. And if you missed the previous videos in this series, check the links in the description. If you're new here, my name's Danny. I'm an indie app developer and creator of Fudget. If you want to learn how to create cross-platform apps and web apps using technologies like vue.js, Quasar and Firebase, click subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss anything. Let's get started with Firebase. So we want to go to firebase.google.com and click on Get Started. And then we need to log in, but you might need to create an account. So we'll log in and enter my password. And now to create a new project, we want to click on Add Project. We want to give it a name, so I'm going to call this Quasar and click Continue. And I'm going to disable Google Analytics for this project and click Create Project. And our project is now ready. I'll click Continue. And we can now see the Firebase console for our new project in the browser. And from here, we can create a database, set up storage, and much more. Let's create a database for Quasar. So I'm going to go to Database, and we want to create a Cloud Firestore database. So I'm going to click on Create Database here, and I'm going to click on Start in Test Mode so that we can easily access our database and read and write to it. But obviously this isn't very secure because anyone with our database URL could potentially make changes to it. So for a production app, you would want to be in production mode. But we're just going to leave it in test mode for this project. Click on Next. We have to choose a location. I'm just going to use the default location. But if you like, you can choose a location that's nearer to you. I'm not really sure what difference that makes. Then I'm going to click on Done. And we can now see our database here. Obviously, it's completely empty right now. And Cloud Firestore databases are made up of collections. And each collection contains documents. So let's create a collection for our posts. So I'm going to click on Start Collection. And I'm going to call this Posts. Click on Next. And we can now add a document to our post. So I'm just going to give this a document ID of ID1. We can now add some fields. So I'm going to add a caption field. So I'm going to call that caption for storing our image caption. This is going to be a string. And I'm going to put Golden Gate Bridge in there for now. I'll click on this add button to add another field. And this can be our location field. So I'll call this field location. And again, this is going to be a string. And I'm just going to put San Francisco, United States. And I'm going to click on Add Field. And this can be our image URL. So I'm going to call this image URL. And again, this is going to be a string. And this needs to be a path to an image file. And for now, I'm just going to grab an image URL from Imgur. So I'm going to go to imgur.com. And I'll search for Golden Gate Bridge. And this image looks pretty cool, so I'll click on that. And I'm going to right click this image and open it in a new tab. Then I'm just going to copy this image URL, jump back to our database, and we'll paste that here in this image URL field. And we also need to display the date the image was posted in our app. So I'm going to add one more field, which is the date field. And we're going to be storing this in the numeric timestamp format. So for this one, we're going to set the type to number. And I'm just going to quickly open up the console here and just run date.now to get the date right now. Copy that number. And I'll just paste that in here. And I'll click on save. And we can now see our post collection here in the first column, and then our first document in the second column. And we can see all of the fields here. And I've just realized we also need an ID field. So I'm going to click on add field and just add this ID. And I'm going to set this to ID1. Add that. And let's just add one more document for a different post. So I'm going to click on add document. I'm going to give this an ID of ID2. I'm going to add an ID field, and also which is going to be a string, and I'll also set that to ID2. Then I'm going to add caption, which is going to be a string, and I'll set that to London I. I'll add another field for the location, and I'll set that to London, United Kingdom. And I'll add another field for the image URL, which will be a string. Let's just grab a different image for that. So I'll jump back to Imgur and search for London Eye. And I'll click on this image here. Right click that and open it in a new tab. Just copy the image URL. Jump back to the database and paste that in this image URL field. And then I'll just add one more field for the date, which will be a number. And again, I'm just going to use the console to grab the current date. Just run date.now. Copy that number and paste it in there. Close the DevTools, click Save. And we now have 2 posts in this post collection. And later on, we'll display these posts within our app. So we're currently using images that are hosted on Imgur. But we're not going to be storing our images on Imgur. We're going to be storing them in Firebase Storage. So let's set up Firebase Storage and upload an image there. And then we'll grab the URL of that image and add it to one of our posts. So I'm just going to jump to the Golden Gate Bridge image. So I'll copy that URL. And I'll save this image. Save it to the desktop. And then I'm going to jump to the storage page. We need to click on Get Started. And I'm just going to leave the default security rules, click Next. I'm just going to use the default location, click Done. And our storage bucket is now created. So let's upload a file to this. So I'll click on Upload File. Go to my desktop and choose that image that we downloaded. And that image is now uploaded. If we click on it, we can see a preview of it. And if we click on this link here, then we can get the URL to this image. So I'm going to copy this URL. And then I'll jump back to the database page. And go to the first document in our post collection, which is the Golden Gate Bridge one. And I'll just update the image URL to the URL we just copied. Now, obviously, we manually uploaded this image to storage, but our app is going to automatically upload an image here when the user creates a post, which is something that we're going to do with our Node.js and Express Backend. If you want to take Quasar to the next level, check out my 15-hour course, Progressive Web Apps with Vue.js, Quasar and Firebase. In this course, once you finish creating Quasar, you'll then get to turn this into a progressive web app by adding home screen installation, pre-caching, caching strategies, background sync and push notifications. You'll also test and fix the app in all the main desktop browsers, as well as Android and iOS. You'll also find 2 big assignments and all of the completed source code for every module. Get the course with my promo code at dannys.link/QuasarPWA, and the link is in the description. Let's create a backend for our app locally using Node.js and Express. This is going to be unbelievably simple. So I'm going to start by creating a new folder in our project, and you can call it whatever you like, but I'm going to call it backend. And I'm going to cd into this folder. So I'm going to open a new terminal and just do cd backend, and then I'm going to run npm init. And this will initialize our backend as an npm package and create a package.json file so that we can easily manage dependencies and stuff like that. So it's asking us for some options. You can fill some of these in if you want, but I'm just going to leave them all blank. So I'm just going to hit enter on all of these. And that's done. And now if we look in the backend folder, we now have a package.json file, which will manage all of our dependencies. And we can also add some custom scripts to help us to fire hard to remember commands. And we will add some custom scripts later. And now let's add a file where we can store all of our backend code. So I'm going to create a new file and call it index.js. And we're going to be using Express for this backend. So I'm going to jump to expressjs.com. And so Express is a minimal, easy to use framework for creating applications with Node.js. And it's really handy for creating APIs, which is what we're going to be doing with this. So it tells us how to install Express. We just need to run npm install express -- save. So I'm going to copy that and run that. And we do need to run this inside this backend folder. So I'll run that and install Express. And that's finished installing. So if we go to getting started and hello world, then we have a really simple hello world example here. So I'm just going to copy all of this code and I'll paste it into our index.js file. And I'll save that. So what's going on here? Well, first of all, we're just requiring the Express framework here. Then we're creating a new Express app so that we can do some stuff with Express. And this is just setting the port that our app is going to be running on. And here we're setting up a basic endpoint for get requests to the path /. And the second parameter is a callback, which has a request object and a response object. The request object will give us information about the request that was sent to this endpoint. And the response object allows us to send something back to the browser. So you can see here we're just using response.send to send a string hello world back to the browser. And then this last line, app.listen, is just launching our server and making this server available to us at localhost port 3000. So how can we launch this app? Well, if we jump back to this hello world page, it tells us one way that we can launch this here by just running node and then the name of our file. So I'm just going to run node index.js. And that's now running, and we see a log here, example app listening at localhost 3000. And that log is coming from here. So if we go to the browser now and go to localhost :3000, then we can now see the text hello world, which was sent from this endpoint here. And I'm just going to tidy this up a bit. I'm going to add some comments to sort of split the file up because this is going to get pretty big later on. So I'm going to add a comment which just says dependencies, and we'll place all of our dependencies under that. And then I'll add a comment which just says config-express, and I'll put this express line under that. And I'm not planning on changing this port, so I'm just going to select everything inside this app.listen method and just put 3000 in there and just get rid of this const. And I'm just going to add another comment above this listen line, which just says listen. And I'm just going to add another comment above this endpoint and indent that. And personally, I prefer full names for things. So I'm going to change this REQ to request and change this RES to response. And we'll also need to change that here as well. And then I'm going to add some curly braces here to make it a bit clearer what's going on, like that. And I'm just going to change the text that we're sending back to the browser here. I'm just going to change that to I love node so hard. Save that. Let's reload that. We're still seeing hello world there, because the way that we launched this app with node index.js, we have to restart our server every time we make changes. So I'm going to close that process and launch it again. And that's running, so I'll just reload this. And we can now see I love Node so hard. But it kind of sucks that we have to restart our server every time we make a change. So let's add auto restarting to our server in the next video. Let's make our server restart automatically every time we make a change. So we're going to do this with a package called nodemon. So I'm just going to search for nodemon and go to nodemon.io. And it says here, nodemon is a utility that will monitor for any changes in your source and automatically restart your server, which is exactly what we want. So first of all, I'm going to install this globally with this command. And I need to kill my server temporarily. So I'll launch that command and install nodemon. And that's now installed globally. So I'm going to click on the documentation link. And it tells us how to use that here. So we can just run nodemon and then our application name. So let's try that now. I'm going to clear the console and run nodemon index.js. So I'll just reload our page here. Now, hopefully, if I make a change in our code here, we should see the server restarted automatically. So I'm going to change this response to I love Node so hard it hurts. Save that. And you can see it's restarted the server. And if we reload the page, then we can see the server has been restarted. Now, we might forget this command, nodemon index.js. So I'm going to create an npm script that's easy to remember. So I'm going to open our package.json file, the one that's in the backend folder. And in this script section here, I'm going to get rid of this test script here and create one called start. And then we're just going to run the same command, nodemon index.js. So I'll paste that in there and save that. And now to launch our app, we should be able to just run npm start. Let's try that. And yeah, it's fired our script and launched our app with nodemon. Let's just refresh that and see if it's still working. Yeah, that's still working. And with Node apps, we can also display logs in our console with console.log. So let's just give that a try. So after we send this response, I'm just going to add console.log, and our endpoint is working. Save that. And if I now reload this page, then we can see that log in the console. So this endpoint is just returning some text. Let's create an endpoint that returns some data, some simple posts data. So first of all, I'm going to change the URL of this endpoint to /posts. And I'm also going to change this comment to endpoint-posts. And I'm going to get rid of this console log. And I'm going to set up a simple array called posts. And we'll put some dummy posts data in here. So I'll give each object a caption property and let's say a location property. And I'll create 2 posts. And in the first one, I'll just put Golden Gate Bridge and San Francisco. And then in the second one, I'll put London Eye and London. And then instead of returning this string here, we'll just return this posts array. So we'll do response.send posts. And I'll save that and reload our page. And we have an error here because we're trying to get to the root of this app and we don't have an endpoint set up for the root. We just have an endpoint set up for /posts. So let's go to /posts. And we can now see this simple posts array being returned by this endpoint. If you found this video useful so far, make sure you smash the like button. and leave a comment telling me what you think about Quasar. Let's deploy our backend server somewhere now. And there are lots of places where we can host our backend for free, such as IBM Cloud, OpenNode and Netlify, and feel free to choose whichever one you like, but I'm going to use Heroku because with Heroku I can deploy this server with just one terminal command without having to set up Git repositories and stuff like that, and I want to keep this as simple as possible. So if you want to follow along with me and use Heroku, then you want to go to heroku.com and click on sign up and fill in all the fields and create an account. Once you've created an account, you should be able to log in. So I'm just going to log in now. And then we want to click on create new app. And we need to give it a name. And this name will form part of the URL for our app. And I'm going to call mine Quasar Backend. But you'll probably need to pick something else because I'm using this. Then we want to click on create app. And it tells us how to deploy our app here. And the usual method is to create a Git repository and to just push new code to that Git repository. But I'm going to be using a plugin to make it a bit simpler. But first of all, we need to download and install the Heroku CLI. So I'm going to click on that link. And it tells us how to install that here. So on Windows, you have to download an installer. And on Mac, you need to run this command. And you might need Homebrew first in order to run this command. And you can get that at brew.sh. And you can install Homebrew with this command here. But once you've got the Heroku CLI tool installed, we can then install a plugin called Heroku Builds to make deployment really easy. So I'm just going to search for Heroku Builds and click on this GitHub link. And I'll scroll down and it says Heroku CLI plugin to list and create builds for Heroku apps. So we need to install this first, and we can do that with this command. So I'm going to copy that. I'm just going to kill our server for a minute and then run that command. And that plugin is now installed. And I'm going to scroll down a bit. And this is what we want. Create build from local directory. So we just need to run Heroku builds :create-a and then the name of our app. And we want to run this from the folder that we want to deploy. Okay, let's use this Heroku builds plugin to deploy our app to Heroku. So I'm going to copy this command and paste it into our terminal. And we need to replace this bit, example app, with the name of our app. And mine is Quasar Backend, but you'll need to put whatever you called your app. And this is really hard to remember. Heroku builds :create-a Quasar Backend. So let's create an npm script so that we don't have to remember all this. So I'm going to copy that, jump back to the package.json file, the one that's in the backend folder, and we'll add another script here, and we'll call this one deploy. And I'll just paste that command in there. And now hopefully we can just deploy our app by running npm run deploy. So let's try that. I'll delete all this. And let's just try npm run deploy. And it looks like it's doing something. And it looks like that's finished. It says Quasar Backend.herokuapp.com deployed to Heroku. And it's given us the URL for our app. So let's copy that and paste it into our browser. And remember, we need to go to /posts because that's the only endpoint we have for this app. So we'll go to /posts and see if it's working. And we have an application error. An error occurred in the application and your page could not be served. check your logs for details. You can do this from the Heroku CLI with the command Heroku logs -- tail. Okay, so let's try running this command, see if that helps us. So I'm going to run that command. It says missing required flag -- app. Okay, so I'll try that again and I'll add another flag -- app with our app name. And mine is Quasar Backend. And let's see what we can find in this log. So where did it go wrong? And we have an error here, nodemon not found. And I think that's because I installed nodemon globally, but not locally. So let's try installing that locally and redeploying, see if that fixes this. So I'm going to close that process. And I'm going to run npm install nodemon -- save to install nodemon locally. And that's finished installing. So let's try deploying that again. So I'll run npm run deploy. And that's finished deploying. So let's try reloading the live version of our posts endpoint here. That's taken a while. I'm just going to close this tab and open it in another one. And it looks like we still have an error here. So I'm going to try running that logs command again. So Heroku logs tail app Quasar Backend. And let's see what we can find here. And we have this error here. Web process failed to bind to port within 60 seconds of launch. So let's just Google that error message. And we have a Stack Overflow post here, Heroku and Node.js error with this same error. So I'll click on that. And we'll scroll down to the answer. This answer says, Heroku dynamically assigns your app a port. So you can't set the port to a fixed number. Heroku adds the port to the env, which means environment variable. So you can pull it from there. Switch your listen to this. Okay, so let's try that. So I'll jump back to our app code. And instead of app.listen, we're going to do .listen and then process.env.port and then the port number as a fallback. So I'm just going to add 2 pipes in there and then just put process.env.port. We'll save that and redeploy it and see if it'll work this time. So npm run deploy. That's finished deploying, so let's try that again. I'll go to my Heroku app URL /posts and reload that. And it's now working. We can now see our simple backend running live on the internet. And in the next module, we're going to modify this post endpoint to grab the real data from our Cloud Firestore database. So if I just go to database and then posts, so we're going to modify this endpoint to grab our real data from this post collection in our Firestore database so that we can then use this endpoint within our app to display the real posts within our app. We still have 2 more videos to go in this series, and in the next video, we're going to connect our backend to our Firebase Cloud Firestore database. We're going to work on our posts endpoint and grab all of the posts from the database. Then in our app, we're going to trigger this endpoint and grab all of the posts and display them on the home page. We're going to sort these posts by date and handle any errors. And we're going to add a really nice loading state using a skeleton component. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos in this series or any other videos. And if you're interested in the full course, where we're going to turn this into a progressive web app, then go to dannys.link/QuasarPWA, and the link is in the description.